So with that, I'm just going to have each of my panelists just briefly introduce themselves, and then we can kind of start the discussion. So Neil, why don't you start first?
Sure, happy to. Do we need the microphones? Yeah, okay. Niels Emmerich, I'm heading search and evaluation across therapeutic areas for AbbVie. AbbVie focuses primarily on immunology, oncology, and neurosciences. Those are the three core therapeutic areas. So we have teams in search and evaluation for each of these areas, and we're all, most of us are based in Chicago, with additional people on the West Coast and East Coast and in Europe.
Hi there, Alex Rabi. I'm a transactions director from Amgen. I flew out from Los Angeles. I'm very happy to be in Boston. Our business development group encompasses Amgen Ventures, standard search and evaluation function, and the transactions group that I'm part of, where we oversee M&A and everything from very early stage collaborations and agreements, including, for example, discovery stage, target discoveries, one of which we have with Boston Children's Hospital here, all the way through to commercial stage partnering.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Levier, and I work in the business development licensing team of Merck. The business development licensing team has 5 main sites across the globe, and one of them is Boston, so I head the Boston team. So my team of search and evaluators and transactionalists look for opportunities for licensing and acquisition in the New England and Eastern Canada provinces. And we look for opportunities for mainly therapeutic in licensing or acquisition, from early discovery through proof of concept in the clinic. We also are co-located in Cambridge with our MRL Ventures Fund, which is a fund that is about $250 million fund, and they seed or participate in Series A rounds of financing, usually fund about $15 million for the life of the company. And we have an open relationship with them where if something's too early for us, we hand it over to them for potential seeding or investment. If something is already has some great data, they'll hand it over to us and say, this may be of interest to you for licensing. So it's a great opportunity to be able to really see a lot from very early all the way through the clinic. Thanks.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I'm Tim Luca from Eli Lilly. So I head up quite a chunk of our early stage partnering. It's called Emerging Technology and Innovation, which basically complements Lilly's main therapeutic area, late stage licensing groups. We do a lot of the early stage platforms, novel targets. We're also geographically focused in the usual places: West Coast, East Coast, London, Golden Triangle. So we do a mixture of deal making. We're also mostly very experienced scientists and deal makers, and also Lilly's invested about $800 million in external venture funds away from corporate venture, and that's also quite a source of innovation, which we could obviously talk about a little bit later. And most of those new codes that are being created are also partnering opportunities for us. All of that science comes through my team as well. So it's great to be here, and looking forward to the panel.
Thank you. Okay, so what we've done as a team is that we've decided to kind of address about 4 or 5 different big themes. So it includes strategies in accessing early stage opportunities, the value of relationships, resources that big pharma can bring to the table, internal processes and negotiations, and then lastly, kind of unfolding of the deal process. So we're assuming that most of you are either investors or early stage companies, and so we're hoping that these themes will resonate with you. And like I said, if you have questions or there's something that you really want to ask, please just raise your hand and I will definitely call on you, and we can start the discussion. So why don't we start with strategies in accessing early opportunities. I think that oftentimes leaders of early stage companies, especially first-time entrepreneurs, they really kind of lament about not knowing who to get in touch with at a big pharma company. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have our panelists kind of each explain what are they doing to kind of reach out to you as early stage innovators, and how are they trying to make themselves more accessible. So with that, I'm going to pick on Liz first.
Sure. So my team in Boston, as I mentioned earlier, there's 5 sites business development licensing. That started about 5 years ago. Originally, our BD folks were all based in headquarters in New Jersey with a few scouts around the world. We decided to change that model and have teams in the areas of high innovation like Boston, San Francisco, etc., where we embed ourselves in the ecosystem. So it's not that we're just here just to obviously transact and do deals, but it's to be part of and building relationships with the ecosystem here in Cambridge and Boston. And so that means my team, one of their objectives is to ensure every month they're going to meet and volunteer their time, whether it be with Mass Connect, which is a program to mentor new companies in the area and give feedback to these companies on where they could focus their resources, whether it be informally meet with accelerators in the area to also do the same, maybe give some feedback on where academic labs could be focusing their studies so that it can kind of direct that. Of course, no strings attached. This is all informal discussions and relationships. And this embedding into the ecosystem helps, I think, the whole ecosystem. And without having any strings attached, we don't say, well, giving you this feedback and then you can't partner. It's partner whoever makes sense for you for the future of your program. But it's just more of kind of giving back and taking the resources and knowledge of what we're hearing at Merck and what we're seeing when we're meeting with all these companies and being able to give that feedback to the startups and kind of make the ecosystem even stronger than it is right now. And so, if we weren't doing that, then there's really no purpose of us being in Cambridge, Boston. The purpose is us be here and get to know who we are. And if you really don't know who to contact, even with us trying to be out there and getting our name out in all the different sites, our website actually has all our pictures, all our names, where we are, and what our therapeutic areas are for focus. So you can just click on contact, and we're all there. So,
Nils?
Yeah, I think it's not that different, which probably doesn't come as a big surprise. We have people here in the local microenvironment, 2 from our ventures team, and another 4 from our search and evaluation team, again representing therapeutic areas of our interest. Conferences, events like this one are an opportunity to connect with people. There are obviously also the larger events like Bio Europe, JP Morgan. I say that from my point of view, also the scientific conferences have risen in importance in the last couple of years, and usually that's what we have on average more fruitful dialogues, I would say, than Bio, for instance. In addition to that, you can find us via the AbbVie website, and the most straightforward way to reach out to us is licensing@abbvie.com. That's an email. There's a person that monitors that inbox. It's not a dead mailbox. Each of these opportunities gets assigned to a person from one of the teams. If it's a venture opportunity, it goes to the venture team. If it's a partnering opportunity outside of the venture investment, it goes to one of the other team members, and it will be reviewed.
Tim?
Yeah, I think predictably, it's very similar answers. I guess it's quite ironically funny that on our side we think we're super accessible and it's quite obvious where to go. And I've actually run my own biotech company. I know that's not true. Now you're thinking, who's the right person and what should I do? Should I use the website? And pharma companies are like super oil tankers. They're all over the globe. But I think these days, certainly Lilly's shored up its way of partnering. We totally reliant on bringing in novel targets and breakthrough science, and huge amounts of corporate effort have gone into our sponsorship of events. We're sponsors of Lab Central, Biolabs. We're at every major event. We're at all the scientific partnering conferences. Our website, again, is a portal that isn't a dead mailbox. We've actually had journalists audit. They put in kind of random partnering requests, and you can be sure that our CEO keeps a close eye on whether our performance is up to scratch or not. In fact, some of the CEO's friends even put opportunities through the Lilly website. So I think it's a mixture of embedding in the ecosystem. If you really don't know anyone, the actual blind website is actually a useful way of getting in touch with us, and most of us have got reasonable profiles throughout the partnering events and the ecosystem. So I would encourage anyone, no matter how small a chance you think there might be of partnering, and we probably can talk about the odds of success later and how tough it is, but we actually want to hear from you. Our jobs are reliant on great innovators, so please do contact Lilly if any of you think you've got useful opportunities.
Alex?
I think my panelists covered all the major ways. They're similar for Amgen. We also have a website, amgenbd.com, where you can submit external requests. And as with my fellow panelists, it's not a dead email. We have a team of about half a dozen prospectors and search and evaluation team members that are spread across both Cambridge, San Francisco, and the Thousand Oaks headquarters, and somebody in Europe as well who monitor that. And what they do is they put all those requests with the materials that are submitted in front of the cross-functional team internally to review, and we strive to get back to everyone. And on top of that, I'd add just that the scientific disease area-specific conferences, we've seemed to have had more productive discussions at those, so I would encourage everyone to kind of look at those more so than some of the, I think, the general larger VD conferences.
There's one thing I would like to add with respect to how not to reach out to us, and that is scraping at appv.com email addresses from LinkedIn or other sources and then mass email 20, 30 people at the same time is not a good use of your or our time.
I'll finish up this last question with kind of our efforts at Boehringer. We're probably the least well-known of the big pharma relative to my colleagues here because we are a private company, family held. We have taken the tactic of basically trying to figure out where are various global hotspots and how can we try to set up really kind of a grassroots effort in these locales. So in Boston, which is probably, I guess, the premier global hotspot over San Francisco, I would argue, what we started were a series of programs, much like Mass Connect. We call ours BI Office Hours, where it's an opportunity for early stage companies to come and sit down and meet with a big pharma company, and for us to kind of give a 360 view of big pharma. So you're not just meeting the BD&L team, but it's also pipeline marketing, it's medicine, it's research. Our venture fund is there, and we try to bring in resident experts within BI to try to help in that conversation. We also run a series of innovation prizes in various cities. I oversee Boston and San Diego. And then we run what's called BI Academy, which are kind of panel discussions, much like this, in various cities. We started in Boston. We're now in 6 cities across the globe. We're in Boston, New York, San Diego, London, Vienna, and Heidelberg. So for us, the effort has really been trying to get to know the local communities through these programs. Let me ask you this to the audience. I mean, what's your biggest frustration in trying to reach out to big pharma? Yes?
Thank you for giving insights on how to reach you. I don't think any of us in 2018 have a difficulty in reaching you. I think the issue that, I'm Suguna Rajakonda from Cleveland Clinic. The issue, I think, is getting some feedback on what it is. We send you a one-pager, we send you a relevant publication, and we send you the relevant technology that fits your strategy. That is clearly given. And what we're looking for is more than not interested. Whether, an answer like, does it fit our strategy, makes sense. But something more on the technology than not interested is what the innovator is looking for, because what we are looking for is it not a fit, or if it's a fit, what are the gaps in the data that we have that you want to see, or it's a no-go for reasons. I think that would be the best information we look for.
Sure. As Bill Clinton used to say, I feel your pain. It's like, I think, within Boehringer, and I'll let my colleagues speak also for themselves, I think what we've really done as a concerted effort is not to, when we say no, not just to leave it at that, but to really give you an explanation as to why we felt, the opportunity wasn't a good fit. Because for us, I think it's really about relationship building, and if we just shut you off, or anybody off, it leaves a bad feeling, right? So our view is that let's try to spend a few extra minutes and give you a rationale as to why something wasn't a good fit, and then keep the door open. And the other thing I would say is that what we also try to stress is that even if something's not a good fit, we also try to tell our colleagues, point out 1 or 2 things that you really do like about that program, so that you also understand that, okay, it's not a great fit for us, but what you're doing is a good thing, and just a partner out there. Yes?
Who attends BI Academy and why?
It's mostly very early stage companies. It ranges from principal investigators who are looking to start up a company and they've never done it before. It's the tech transfer offices in the Boston area. Sometimes it's like the Partners Venture Fund. All the way up to companies that are kind of like Series A, Series B. So that's really, it's the local community that's really here. So, but maybe my colleagues could opine on what are they trying to do to address your issue?
Yeah, so I think we all strive, and we actually do try to train our people who work for us to ensure that the feedback is clear, and if there's not interest, not respond with out of strategy, right? Now, not to try to stand up for my people and whatnot, but it is easier when there's more information, right? So if there's been an exchange and meeting where we've actually spent the time to sit through and listen to the presentation, that's a lot easier to say feedback on this is the strengths, this is the weaknesses, and we tell folks come to us early and often, right? Don't expect that the first discussion is going to be potentially the one. Let's continue that relationship and give feedback as our time goes on and help focus resources. But I can say that we can't do that to everyone. Even though we strive, we are a fairly small team in the world. And so there are times I'm sure folks cannot respond with that full scope, but we do strive for our folks to do that. And with little information, it's very hard to be able to give that constructive feedback right away for everyone. We try.
The one thing I would add is it helps to ask explicitly for feedback and guidance. If you do that, you usually get more information played back to you.
Right.
Can I ask a question, please? Sorry.
Sure.
So now, I totally understand, that's the same frustration which we feel isn't there like a checklist, like when you are evaluating, you would be having like a checklist, right? Okay, this is the criteria on which you are basing whether something is good, bad. Majority of the, like the NIH grant process, Sure, a lot of time they review, but sometimes, the worst thing is grant not reviewed, So similarly here, like if something like a checklist, so we are not wasting our time submitting it, and then we at least know, okay, these are the things, so then, we give you the information what you need, rather than, oh, this is what we don't have.
Maybe I could cover a little bit of that. So you're absolutely right, we have a very coherent process. I mean, we have, similar to what Anders was saying, we have literally thousands of opportunities coming in, and the success rate's probably less than 0.5% for deals, but some of those start small, often it's a journey together, those turn into billion-dollar deals a year later, so please persevere, but there's no getting away from the fact that beyond the technical criteria, which can be stage, therapeutic area fit, there's also the human side. Most companies don't want things that are way too crazy and don't have the expertise. They don't want things that are perceived as too dull or me too, or things we could actually just do ourselves if we wanted to. Then we don't want things that we're already doing ourselves, and we can't tell you that because that's proprietary information. So the kind of fit box is actually quite complicated. It's a very fine line between innovative and out of strategy, dull or breakthrough, or things that we probably might do ourselves. Are you more advanced than we are, so therefore you could accelerate our efforts? Those things, then we would jump on them. But sometimes if you're a year behind our internal efforts, we're going to have to say no, and it's very hard for us to explain why. But then on top of that, the technical side is a lot more straightforward around differentiation from standards of care, the sort of studies you've got and the data you've got today. Maybe you don't have enough data for us to make a decision, and that would be more of a, keep talking to us kind of story. So feedback is quite a complicated area. Actually, we strive to really help innovators with a lot of time and effort, but even just explaining that, you imagine if you multiply that by 10,000 opportunities, it is, I don't want to get the violins out for Pharma because we're obviously in a privileged position to talk to people like you, but it is quite tricky actually to keep really strong relationships with so many people, watch those projects mature, and many of those do turn into billion-dollar deals, so please persevere because we would love to keep talking to you guys. But if you get a slightly unusual email, I hope that explains a little tiny bit about what's going on behind the scenes. We're taking it incredibly seriously. We have this massive machine of scientists and passionate people that want to partner, and sometimes the little bits don't quite come together at the right time, that's all.
I'll just add that, yes, it'll be different for every company. The high-level criteria might be the same, looking for some kind of preclinical in vivo data is one of the criteria Amgen looks at. Having placebo control is important. Being able to, it being a genetically validated target, something we also look for. So once it meets some of those initial hurdles and it's within the therapeutic areas of focus, at Amgen there's 6 of them that we've listed on the Amgen BD website. That usually helps move it along. And I think if you add to that what Niels mentioned, specifically asking for feedback on the reason if enough wasn't provided, we do strive to provide that.
Yeah, I think that the devil is in the details, and that's why the checklists probably don't work. Maybe 10 years down the road, you could replace each of us and our teams with some AI algorithm.
Bite your tongue.
But for now, I think there are very different criteria that apply to an antisense versus a small molecule versus an antibody or an antibody drug conjugate. And so we spend time on looking at the details, but we are not in a position to hand out a generally applicable checklist that would apply equally to all asset classes, all mechanisms, all disease areas.
Because
Yes,
we
sir.
partner at different stages, it's also difficult to do the checklist, right? So being upfront to what data there is and what data you strive to have in X amount of time, to know where, not only where it is, but where it's going, but then showing the knowledge of what else is out there and how this is different, right? And showing that you have that information, whether or not you lay it all out, but you have that information that we think this is different than, this publicly known molecule that this other company has, and we can tell you why. So just already note those differentiating factors, and then what data is in hand and what data is still to come, to be completely transparent with it.
We had a question.
So I think I hear this quite a lot from, like as a response, or maybe from fellow companies. They say that you should have an internal champion within the big pharma so that we get constructive feedback. At what stage actually from the BD then it will transfer to the kind of discussions into more kind of therapeutic heads or kind of get involved. So I see that maybe at that stage we kind of get to learn more. I would like to see when this will be kind of these kind of discussions happen within big pharma.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's necessary. I would really rely, every pharma company is different, but our S&E folks are PhD, MD scientists who have, we hired them because they have scientific background. They know how to look at something, know what good looks like, and be able to determine, knowing our internal pipeline and our scientists and expertise, and be able to chat kind of what the next step is. So it's just because someone's talking to BD, at least in my team, doesn't mean that you're not getting the attention of the scientists. And I've done acquisitions of companies where the therapeutic area had never met the company, right? So it's not like you check the box, you met the therapeutic area head, and now you have a deal, right? So it doesn't really necessarily mean which level or who you're talking to. It's just making sure it's getting the attention, and the BD person is a great kind of connector to that. Yeah.
Yeah, the way we do that is 85% of opportunities do not make it to the governance committee where we have the therapeutic area heads. And that is because we also have MDs, MD PhDs, PhDs who understand the science and can be for the background of our strategies for our TAs, and our BD strategy can say whether or not something is a good fit. Right? And those 15% of opportunities that might potentially be a good fit, we take those to a group of individuals, the head of clinical development, the head of early development, head of discovery, a couple of other people, both from the transaction and search and evaluation side. And then that group gets exposed to those opportunities and makes a decision whether or not to further pursue. Right? So it's a process with multiple stages. And part of our job is, because our TA heads have many other things to worry about, conduct of clinical trials, etc., to keep the vast number of opportunities outside of these discussions.
I'll just add to that having an internal champion is critical at Amgen as well. And one reason for that maybe is not always clear to people outside is there's a lot of internal negotiation. You're sure you've heard that, probably more internally than the company. But sometimes when you're bringing in an outside program, there's internal trade-offs that have to be made. And so having that internal champion who can kind of pound the table and say, well, I know that we have X number of resources committed for the following year. If we're bringing this program in, it's going to be one more. I'm willing to trade this one off, this internal program for this other one. So that in those scenarios, it is important to have it. And sometimes you don't get it initially, as Neil mentioned. It takes a little while.
Let me frame my question a little bit in an extension to that. Say, is it okay to ask BD people, is there an internal champion for this program, so that we would like to learn more kind of things, or would that make, already BD is kind of looking into it, why you're asking this question?
Well, the BD person is the one, at least in my experience, is championing it, right? They're the ones finding the people, the alignment. They're credibly pushing back on internal scientists when they say no. Why? What is the data? What's the problem here? So we are the ones who are, you know, when I hire S&E people, I don't want the middleman. I don't want the person to say, here's information, scientist, what do you think, and give that back. Then there's no purpose to the middleman. Why not just have the direct conversation with the scientist? So look for people who actually are championing. They're finding the right people to align, whether chemistry, biologics, who are the right people to bring together. It's not one person. It's usually a team of people who are working together, and when they get it, they run, right? And they get that alignment. When they're not getting that alignment, that's when they go back to the company and say, you know, we're not getting it, here's why, here's the issues. So that really, our BD people are championing it. Of course, they're finding the connectors internally. It's not always the same people to make something happen, but they are really, they're most of the conversations of my team coming in is, who do I need to contact? I'm getting a dead end here. Is there someone else internally? Like, this is the opportunity. What should we do? A lot of our talk is talking about strategy and how to do that. So, and at least in our case, you know, we are championing it and trying to find a home.
I could also say, I mean, we place a lot of emphasis on kind of, it sounds stupid, but Team Lilly. You know, you can rest assured that if I'm speaking to you seriously about an opportunity, I've got a huge machinery of expert scientists and therapeutic area people debating the pros and cons of every discussion. I mean, I chair a team in Lilly where all of the heads of therapeutic area search and evaluate sit on our deal flow discussions, you know, help us pick up the best opportunities from their perspective. Sometimes we go it alone if it's a breakthrough technology or something that maybe impacts across the company. But there's no getting away from the fact, I think exactly as I think Alex and Neil said, that if you're going to bring in a phase 2 asset and Lilly has a certain budget for that therapeutic area to develop medicines, you either need yours to go into that list somewhere near the top to move forward, or if it's not quite there to displace an internal program, maybe it's not for now or something that's a bit slower or later. But in general, I think trying to put a wedge between BD and science, certainly in Lilly, is futile. We're all one team. You know, we will give you the Lilly view about how this is going to fit into our pipeline and our company, and it's our job to find the champions and the team of people that are going to accelerate your innovation and make it successful for both of us. I mean, we're all outcome-driven people. I'm sure the panel will agree. We're not here to have futile conversations. If we get seriously involved with you, we want to accelerate that program to patients. So rest assured that certainly from Lilly's perspective, if you talk to me, I will find the champions for the best projects, and I'm sure most of the panelists would probably agree with that.
I think our approach that we've taken through the office hours program is to give you direct access to senior executives that are in different parts of the businesses. So everyone that comes to an office hours from the Boehringer side is a director level or above. And so that way we think that a great opportunity that may come to us can kind of channel through different parts of the company. You know, I mean, aside from BD, which will happen anyways, but there are other ways through the company by this process. I wanted to touch on something, Liz, that you talked about, which was relationships, because I think that, and I think that gets to your question as well, and some of the others, which is that developing and spending the time to forge a relationship with people in big pharma is invaluable. And you know, I know we live in the era of social media and LinkedIn and other tools like that make it seem like it's easy, but it's rather impersonal. And I don't think you can underestimate the value of really getting to know people at a personal level, because if you call up from Cleveland Clinic and we've maybe either done a deal in the past or we've had multiple conversations, you know, we get to know you, your reputation, you understand what we're looking for. Then when you make a call, it's like, okay, Cleveland Clinic is calling, let me pick up the phone, I'll take that, right? So there's a lot of value in really establishing those relationships. They take a lot of time, but you know, I think they do. I see Rich in the audience here, and I think even like with Mass Medical Angels, I think the relationship with Mass Medical Angels with various pharma companies is a great one, because I know if Rich calls, I'll pick up the phone because I know that he has done the work for an opportunity that may be of interest to us. And so it's an informed discussion when it comes to you. So I think there's a lot of value in spending that time and getting to know people. Maybe others can chime in on this.
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of slightly reverse the discussion, because I actually spun up my own small biotech company from Pharma and then that was acquired a year and a half later. And I probably went to more than 100 partnering meetings, but eventually the whole thing was acquired and it was a super success. But it's quite stressful when you're on the small side and money's running out and you haven't got that much time and you're doing everything from the internet connection to the science to. So I do appreciate what small companies go through, but a lot of this is to do with relationships and timing. Sometimes actually, I mean, if things are out of scope, they're out of scope. That's simple. Lilly doesn't work in ophthalmology, so that's an easy discussion. But growing discussions together is super important. I can think of companies that, actually myself and my colleague in the audience, we spoke to for 2 years, and then actually they turned into like major transactions that were announced by our CEO. But the journey together was quite a long one. We maybe did a few pilot studies together, or raised a few $100,000 just to get some key studies done to help these companies. And we spend a lot of time trying to help and encourage and nurture the right studies to enable us to make really good decisions, and also for your companies to have really good data sets. And we have our own initiatives similar to what Imran was saying. But it's frustrating when you think we're being really slow and you guys are really passionate and really worried about the future. And we really strive to help that journey. But big machines take a while to turn those handles, and there's a lot of little cogs going. But rest assured that if you build the right relations and the right timing and the little pieces do come together, the success is there to be had. But yeah, it's definitely a healthy tension, I think, and I've been on both sides of the line, so I can appreciate that.
I'll add that I think the key word is trust. When you build that over time, Amgen, and I think many of the other panelists would agree, the companies will often do a small deal first before the large deal is done. So to the extent an earlier, younger company can form a deal of some kind with a larger company just to have the relationship, because sometimes you can't get sufficient interaction with those internal champions just at partnering meetings or scientific meetings. So you get that by having a smaller deal, something more focused, but something that at least gets you your foot in the door. And over time, that will help grow the relationship. It also gives you a lot of credibility with other large companies because they see that you already have a relationship with a different large company.
Yeah, I would just very quickly add, I mean, MTAs can be quite controversial in some companies, but I would really encourage you to go for it. I mean, get working together, get those studies done. Most likely, certainly in Lilly, you would own all the data. We're not there to try and steal anything. And all the legal, I mean, we treat MTAs with the same legal thresholds as billion-dollar acquisitions. There's no funny business going on our side. But we really love working with people to get things growing. And I think sometimes material transfer agreements and small, small collaborations make people a bit nervous that they're giving up some secrets. But actually, from my perspective, that's a really super useful way, exactly as Alex was saying, of getting into the Lilly machine, getting to know a few people, working together. And actually, if the data looks good, there's a really great goal, to really do a much fuller collaboration. And I've seen lots and lots of small things grow into really quite big things over time. So I would definitely encourage small interactions with pharma companies to get these relationships and trust going.
Yes?
So I have a question about the early stage science. As more companies are looking for new targets, want to be first in class, do you source new science, early stage science, so before you have an asset or before you have an in vivo set of data differently than if you would look for a larger asset or phase 1 trial asset?
Well, I'd say, I think about 75% of our deals are preclinical, and I don't know from percentage from there how early is before you have a product, but we do many deals with, especially platform companies, where we identify a target, for example, and the product is to come. And so we work together on what is the best target for this modality, and then work together to bring resources of both companies to get it done. So we do all stages, and it really depends on the external party's needs. Right? Where are they as a company? Is this the only asset? Is this a platform? Do they need equity? Is this going to be a single asset company and therefore licensing? So we're very flexible on what it is, and I can't actually put together when and how we're going to structure until I hear the other party's perspective. What is it that the company needs? Where does the company want to be when it grows up? Does it not want to grow up? It just wants to be done as soon as this asset gets to patients. So we need to have those discussions first, and then decide, okay, what's the best point to partner? Is it now? Is it providing, doing an evaluation? Is it doing an equity investment either through BD or through our venture fund? And so it's a conversation, and it's really case specific.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I can just echo that. We do deals across the entire spectrum, from acquisition of companies that have on-market assets, like our acquisition of Pharmacyclics, all the way to very early stage collaborations where we start from scratch, right? Where we define the scope of an R&D collaboration, and it could be with a company that has a novel approach to identifying tractable chemical matter against traditionally undruggable targets, and we jointly work on that, or it could be a target ID collaboration, but we really cover the entire spectrum from ab initio research to marketed products.
Tim, I think.
Yeah, I think different companies and different components in companies have different risk thresholds. I think there's no getting away from the fact that most of the breakthrough innovation doesn't happen in large pharma companies. I'd love to say that we're all target validation experts, but historically a lot of companies have made money from similar mechanisms across the industry. So I think we're looking to people like yourself to really make a strong case around the genetics and how it might be differentiated, some of the safety. Whether you don't necessarily have to have the modality, but things obviously like CRISPR and knockouts and other data, putting together a package around what the promise around the new target is. I think it's very sensitive as an inflection point to data, because there's so little known that a few extra studies can make or break a deal, unfortunately. But we see a lot of things where people have sort of ideas and it's all 100% future looking, but then a few bits of data, and as I say, knockout studies, some new genetic analysis, GWAS data, whatever it is, you can really help us understand the potential value of what you're considering. But it's no, small changes in perception or data at such an early stage can make a huge difference to the level of interest. It's not like reviewing a phase 2 package where you've got 1,000 PDFs in a data room and you can get everyone involved in all the fine detail. There is a lot of subjectivity, I would say, but the more you can do to shore up how it's going to help patients, how it could be differentiated, how it fits into a therapeutic landscape, how it might combine with some of our existing products. Those sorts of information are super helpful around differentiation and safety efficacy balance, I would say, certainly from a scientific perspective.
I think the Boehringer perspective is really that we want to go early because it's an opportunity to collaborate with scientists, and it's an opportunity to help, whether in academia or an early stage company, an opportunity to help them understand what is the process by which a product gets made, and how can we jointly work together scientifically kind of with that in mind. It's a long road, but it is there. We recently started kind of a new division within BI called Research Beyond Borders. The idea is, that's beyond the borders of BI, I should say. But the idea is that, we can't be experts in everything, right? And the world is so much bigger out, and so much great expertise that's out there. So let's create a team that tries to get in early with academicians and early stage biotech companies in areas that we don't have expertise in, and let's start to develop and understand the biology around a particular phenomenon that we may want to get into, and work collaboratively towards, eventually hopefully towards an asset of some sort. But we very much are keen on working with early stage science. Yes?
Right, so wondering, so if a small company partner with a big company, due to the very different company culture, right? So small companies usually very proactive doing things, and then large pharma is really very slow. When they work together for a product, and usually the company culture will have some problem together, and in your experience, do you see is usually the collaboration very smooth, or usually have a lot of fight? And if that's the case, how do you solve the problem?
Sure. Alex, I'm going to pick on you.
Sure. So I just want to make sure I understood the question. Was it that? Could you just clarify again? Repeat the question.
Like small company, right? If they have a product, and then a big company decides to partner, right? They try to co-develop the product.
Yeah.
But because, and then I think one of the panelists talk about there should be a trust between each other. So what if there's sometimes there's no trust, right? Because they are two different companies, right? They're trying to work together. Sometimes they don't understand each other, and the big pharma sometimes don't understand the science.
Sure. Okay.
Small companies trying to develop.
Yeah.
So in your experience, like, is usually the collaboration is very
smooth. Yeah.
Usually, like,
I would say that when you're forming that collaboration, you spend a lot of time, at least we do, determining the roles and responsibilities, and it's usually, in my experience, laid out very clearly in the agreement. So typically, yes, for, let's say, a preclinical or earlier deal, you would work more closely with a smaller company who might have specific expertise in the technology, and so that would be laid out, and so the roles and responsibilities, and also the timeline of when those are taking place. So in my experience, we haven't had many, I can't really think of any where there was a very kind of a more acrimonious or just a lot of disagreement with the partner, because the agreement strives to say who's doing what up until which point. And you see oftentimes that you'll work with an earlier company, maybe with a new modality that a larger company is not familiar with. They will do more of the development up to the, the candidate selection stage or to a certain point at preclinical, and then they would hand it off to the larger company. And so the responsibilities are laid out either from a timeline or from an activity standpoint.
Right. So
Yeah.
depends on who take charge of that, will make decision for certain.
In the decision-making is also usually laid out quite clearly in the agreement. Yeah.
I completely agree with what Alex said, but also prior to signing, we also listen for cues of where there's disagreement, right? So if it turns out we're trying to come up with the work plan, trying to come up with roles and responsibilities, with goals, with timelines, and you keep hearing friction, we need to address that before we sign, because it won't get better after signature, right? And so you either have to just step back and say, are we the right partners? Because we're obviously we don't have the same objectives going forward, and really seriously consider whether to enter into, we call it marriage, right? It's going to be a marriage with the company for a while, right? And so you need to make sure that's right. And for a small company, if you're not seeing eye to eye before signature with a big company, you probably shouldn't sign either, right? To be completely honest, right?
Yeah, I think different teams and backgrounds can have quite different unusual friction points actually. So the one that usually comes up for me is around sort of criteria and terminology. So when we talk about a candidate, that word could mean, probably if I asked all of you guys to list what a candidate is, we'd probably get 27 different answers. I know what Lily wants from a candidate, but your perception might be a little bit less in some days or a little bit more in others. We might want 3-month talks, you might want to do 2-week talks. It's all of these terms need to be straightened out, and that's back to trust and forging a marriage actually, exactly as Liz said. So if you're not feeling you're being dated properly, start worrying.
Question? Yeah.
I'd like to get the panel's perspective. If given the opportunity, would you choose best in class or first in class?
First in class.
First in class.
First in class.
Really?
I think best in class in many competitive areas is a difficult concept, and there are different perceptions and perspectives on how differentiated you have to be to truly be best in class. I think many people have some sort of a pinhole view on their asset and may misunderstand what might be required to really be successful with the late in class follower. It's in many areas, especially in oncology, there are even tumor types and subpopulations where a head-to-head trial against an established first-in-class standard of care would be prohibitive from a timeline and financial perspective. It's a difficult concept. I think we are most interested in first-in-class or in a closely following, clearly differentiated second-in-class with best-in-class attributes. But anything that is further behind is a very challenging concept for us.
Great, so we're actually in the final few minutes. Rich, I'll take your question, and then maybe what I'll ask each of my panelists is maybe to give a final thought as we come to the conclusion. So, Rich?
Well, it may not be a brief question, but after your comment, I just had to ask if each of you could give a little bit about how you think of a candidate. As specifically as you can.
Yeah, I mean, a candidate from Lily's perspective is something that we can accelerate through clinical development. So I think that those are quite expensive studies, and obviously the costs and the impact on businesses grows quite substantially as you get into patients. So having a suitable tox margin, having enough ability to dose patients, for small changes in the clinic, you don't want to have to stop a program because there's not adequate safety margins or you haven't got long enough studies. We'd like to know that the compound is fit for purpose for testing the medical hypothesis as well. So things around target engagement, what sort of biomarkers we might use. We would like, as much as possible, the final form to be ready to accelerate. I think people want to immediately test the main medical hypothesis smoothly in patients, and the more we can front load things to enable that journey to be as smooth as possible, the better. There's a whole list of things around selectivity and predicting PK and PD relationships, but mostly for us it's kind of the right target, is the molecule getting to the right tissues, can you prove it's engaging the target safely, and are you able to test the efficacy hypothesis quickly into the clinic. And particularly for certainly Lily's our head of research and development has publicly stated, I think he wants a larger proportion of our pipeline to be novel targets, up to maybe even 70%. So there it's critical that we can accelerate those programs to test those hypotheses, and then the ones that work, because there's no getting away from the fact this is not an exact science, even though we've all worked on targets we're passionate about that have done nothing in the clinic. I think that's a little bit less these days, but it's tricky. So we want to accelerate as quickly as possible through our next generation research and next generation development strategies to get that hypothesis test done in patients, and then the ones that are actually going to work and provide benefit, we want to get those out the other end as improved medicine. So I think there's a real speed and quality kind of discussion to be had here around how we efficiently test early stage breakthroughs in the clinic. Basically that's what most of the technical criteria are designed for at Lilly.
I've been informed that we're actually out of time, so my apologies. Please give a hand to my panelists. They made a good job.